A bus is traveling at a constant speed along a straight portion of road. The equation d equals 30t gives the distance d in feet from a road marker, that the bus will be t seconds after passing the marker. How many feet from the marker will the bus be 2 seconds after passing the marker? So we have this equation, d equals 30t, that gives us the distance as a function of the time. And we need to find out how many feet the bus will travel after 2 seconds when it passes the marker. So we can just use this equation and plug in a value of 2 for the time to find the distance that the bus travels from the marker. So we'll just have d equals 30 times 2, which is just equal to 60. So after 2 seconds, the bus travels 60 feet from the marker, which is answer choice C. A line in the xy plane has a slope of 1/9 and passes through the point 0, 14. Which equation represents this line? Okay, so the equation of a line is of the form y equals mx plus b, where y is the coordinate on the y-axis, x is the coordinate on the x-axis, m is the slope, and b is the y-intercept. So the problem statement tells us that this graph of the line has a slope of 1/9. So that means our m value should be 1/9. And if we look at our answer choices, answer choice A and B are incorrect because they're saying that the slope is negative 1/9 when it should be 1/9. So we have to choose between C or D. Okay, the problem statement also tells us that it passes through the point 0, 14. Now, 0, 14 has an x-coordinate of 0, which means that this point lies on the y-axis. If we draw this here, we have x and y axes. Those are arrows. So the point 0, 14 is somewhere on the y-axis at a y value of 14, since x is just 0. So that means the y-intercept, where the function crosses the y-axis, is at the point 0, 14. So it would look something like this, the line. So that means our y-intercept should be a value of positive 14. So the only answer choice that has a positive 14 as the y-intercept and a slope of 1/9 is answer choice D. So answer choice D is correct. Answer choice C is wrong because it says that the y-intercept is negative 14, which is incorrect since it passes through the point 0, 14, not 0, negative 14. So D is the correct answer. If x over 8 equals 5, what is the value of 8 over x? So we have this equation, x over 8 equals 5, and we want to manipulate one side so that it looks like 8 over x, and so then we'll know what it equals on the other side. So let's manipulate this to look like 8 over x. So we can multiply both sides by 8. This will give us x equals 8 times 5. By multiplying both sides by 8, 8 over 8 cancels out, and 8 times 5 is 8, just 8 times 5. And then we need to divide both sides by x. So when we divide both sides by x, we'll get a 1 on this side, and we'll get 8 times 5 over x on this side. So this is looking very similar to this, but there's this 5 here. So to get rid of this, we'll just divide both sides by 5. This will give us 1/5 equals 8 over x. Because when we divide by 5, 8 times 5 divided by 5 is just equal to 8. And then 1 divided by 5 is just 5. So then that means that 8 over x is just equal to 1/5 right here. So our answer is 1/5. Triangles ABC and DEF are congruent, where A corresponds to D, B and E are right angles. The measure of angle A is 18 degrees. What is the measure of angle F? So let's draw out these two triangles. We have triangle A, B, C, and triangle D, E, and F. And the problem statement tells us that A corresponds to D, okay, and B and E are right angles. Okay, so B is going to be 90 degrees, and E is also going to be 90 degrees. What is the measure of angle F? Okay. Oh, and it also tells us that angle A is 18 degrees. And since we know that these two triangles are congruent, that means all the sides and all the angles are the same. So if angle A is 18 degrees and angle A corresponds to angle D, then D is also 18 degrees. And to find the angle of F, we just need to remember that all the angles in a triangle add up to 180 degrees. So if we do 180 minus 18 minus 90, we'll get the value of angle F. Because this angle needs to be such that when the angle of F here is added with 18 and 90, it equals 180. So if we do 180 minus the angle of D and E, we should get the angle of F. So when we do 180 minus 18 minus 90, we get an answer of 72 degrees. So angle F is 72 degrees. Which expression is equivalent to this expression here, where M, Q, and Z are positive? So we have this giant expression, M to the fourth, Q to the fourth, Z to the negative 1, times M times Q to the fifth, times Z to the third. Okay, so this is just a rules of exponents problem. And one of the rules of exponents is that when you're multiplying, say, x, that's raised to the power a, with another x, but this one is raised to the power b, as long as the base is the same, which is the thing being raised to the power, so in this case the base is x for both of these, when you multiply these two together, you keep the base the same and add the exponents. So here, x to the a times x to the b is equal to x to the a plus b. So if we had numbers, this would look like, say you had 2 raised to the third times 2 raised to the 2. So when you multiply these together, you keep the base the same and add the exponents. So 3 plus 2, which is just 2 raised to the fifth. So that's how you multiply exponents together, or bases raised to a power, when the bases are the same. So we'll do the same thing here, and we'll just look at which ones have the same bases and add their exponents. So you'll notice that this m here, there was no number up here, like an exponent, like the others, which means that its exponent is actually just 1. And anything raised to the first power is just itself. So m raised to the 1 is just equal to m. Alright. So let's get rid of all this here so we can actually solve the problem. So we have an m to the fourth, and then we have an m raised to the first here. So since they have the same base, we can just multiply them. So then this will just become m to the fifth. Okay, and then we have a q to the fourth and a q to the fifth. They have the same base, so we'll keep the base and add the exponents. 4 plus 5 is 9. Then we have a z over here and a z cubed here. So we'll keep this base the same and add the exponents. So negative 1 plus 3 is equal to 2. The same as 3 minus 1. Okay, so our final answer is m to the fifth, q raised to the ninth, and z squared. We were able to just multiply these together since multiplication is commutative, and these bases are the same, so we can add the exponents. And the only answer choice that has this expression we just derived is answer choice B. So answer choice B is the correct answer. The box plots summarize the masses in kilograms of two groups of gazelles. Based on the box plots, which of the following statements must be true? Okay, so we have two box plots here. So let's first review how box plots work. So here's a little diagram of how box plots work. So here is the box of a box plot. The left edge of the box, this line here, is the first quartile in the data set. And then the other line that is the boundary for the right side of the box is the third quartile. And then the line through the middle of the box is the median of the data set. And then the whiskers out here, which are these long lines, the boundary over here on the left side is the minimum. And then there are some outliers out here, which are outside of the quartile 1 minus 1.5 times IQR range. And then over here we have the maximum of the data set, which is the right-hand edge of the whiskers. And then up here we have the IQR, which is the interquartile range, which is the box, basically. It's the length of the box from quartile 1 to quartile 3. Okay, so now using this information, we can find out which statement is true about these two box plots here. So here we have two box plots. And as you can see, we have no outliers in these box plots. Okay, so answer choice A says the mean mass of group 1 is greater than the mean mass of group 2. Okay, so this does not have to be true because the box plot only gives us information about the minimums, maximums, quartiles, and the median, and the IQR. It doesn't tell us the mean. The mean, we would need every single data point to calculate that. We can only find out what the median is from this line through the box in the box plot. So answer choice A does not have to be true because we have no way of finding the mean of the two data sets for group 1 and group 2. Answer choice B says the mean mass of group 1 is less than the mean mass of group 2. Again, answer choice B is using means, and we have no way to find the mean or to tell which one is greater than the other. So answer choice B is incorrect. We can only have information about the median and these other things in the box plot, but the mean is not a statistic that's on the box plot. The median mass of group 1 is greater than the median mass of group 2. Okay, so the median of group 1 is this line right here, which looks to be at mass of 25 kilograms. And then the median mass of group 2 is right here, which looks to be at 24 kilograms. So the box plots are saying that group 1's mass is greater than group 2. The median is greater than group 2. But answer choice C is saying exactly that. Group 1's median is greater than Group 2's median. So answer choice C must be correct. And if you look at answer choice D, it says the median of Group 1 is less than the median of Group 2. But in actuality, the median of Group 1 is larger, because this line here is further to the right than Group 2's. It's saying that the median mass is 25, but Group 2's median mass is only 24. So D is wrong, and C is the correct answer. The median of Group 1 is greater. The graphs of the given equations in the xy plane intersect at a point xy. What is a possible value of x? Okay, so we have these two functions, y equals 76 and y equals x squared minus 5. So y equals 76, if we draw that on the xy plane here, we'll make some axes, x, y. So y equals 76, so it's just setting y equal to some constant, is just a horizontal line in the xy plane. So it'll look something like this, just a horizontal line. And then the graph y equals x squared minus 5 is just a parabola that is concave up, since the coefficient of x squared is positive. So it'll look something like this. Its origin, the vertex of this quadratic, is not at the origin since it's shifted down by 5 units. So it'll be somewhere down here. Okay, so we need to find the coordinates of the intersection, or really just the x values of the intersection. And we can do that by setting these two equations equal to each other. So we have y equals 76 and y equals x squared minus 5. So y is equal to both of these quantities, so we can just set them equal to each other. So when y equals y, 76 equals x squared minus 5. So I just substituted the value of 76 for y and x squared minus 5 for y. So then we can just solve for the value of x by isolating it. So let's move this negative 5 to the other side by adding 5 to both sides, which will give us 81 equals x squared. And then to find the value of x, we can take the square root of both sides, which will cancel out this squared value here. So we'll just be left with x on the right side, and then on the left side, we'll be left with 9. And since we're taking the square root of something squared, this will be plus minus x. So that means that x is either equal to 9 or negative 9. So x is equal to 9 or x is equal to negative 9. And indeed, if we plug 9 or negative 9 into this equation, when we square it, we get 81 either way. So 81 minus 5 is just equal to 76. So whether it's 9 or negative 9, the two equations here, y equals 76 and y equals x squared minus 5, they still both intersect at a value of x equals 9 or negative 9. So the graph intersects at those two values of x, and the only answer choice here that is either 9 or negative 9 is answer choice B. So answer choice B is correct. To estimate the proportion of a population that has a certain characteristic, a random sample was selected from the population. Based on the sample, it is estimated that the proportion of the population that has the characteristic is 0.49, with an associated margin of error of 0.04. Based on this estimate and margin of error, which of the following is the most appropriate conclusion about the proportion of the population that has the characteristic? Okay, So the proportion of the population with the characteristic is 0.49, but there's a margin of error of 0.04. This means that the interval for plausible values of the proportion of population that has a characteristic will be 0.04 less than the 0.49 and 0.04 greater than 0.49. So the lower bound of the interval will be 0.45 because that's 0.04 less than 0.49, and then 0.04 greater than 0.49 is 0.53. So in this range is the plausible values of the proportion of the population that has the characteristic, which is answer choice A. The rest of the answer choices are outside of the plausible range, like answer choice B and answer choice D. Answer choice C says the proportion is exactly 0.49, but this doesn't take into the margin of error. It is plausible that the actual proportion is within this range of values, so C is also incorrect. So A is the answer. At how many points do the graphs of the given equations intersect in the xy plane? Okay, so we're given these two equations of these two lines, and we can graph them to see how many points they would intersect at. Okay, so I've graphed these two lines in Desmos, which you can do on the testing application. So this is y equals 2x plus 10 and y equals 2x minus 1. So the red line is 2x plus 10 and the blue one is 2x minus 1. And as you can see from this graph, these graphs have the same slope. The slope of both of these graphs is 2. And since the slope is the same, and they have different y-intercept, meaning that these lines don't intersect. So since these lines do not intersect, it means that the graphs intersect at only 0 points. So they will continue on like this without intersecting since they have the same slope, and they're not overlapping graphs since they have different y-intercepts. So there are 0 points where the graphs intersect in the xy plane. So the answer is A. In the xy plane, the graph of the linear function f contains the points 0, 2 and 8, 34. Which equation defines f, where y equals f of x? Okay, so the problem tells us that there's a linear function that passes through these points, and we need to find the equation of that function. So a linear function has the form y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope, the rise over the run, and b is the y-intercept, the y-coordinate of the point of intersection between the line and the y-axis. So to find the slope, we need to find the rise over the run, which is the change in y over change in x. So these points, they give us x, y coordinates for both of these, and we can find the slope by dividing the change in y over the change in x. So the change in y divided by the change in x is going to be equal to, so y goes from 2 to 34. So 34 minus 2 will give us the change in y. And x goes from 0 to 8. So the change in x will be 8 minus 0. So then this simplifies to 32 over 8, which is equal to 4. So the slope is equal to 4. And then the y-intercept, we can find that by plugging in one of the points back into our equation, using the value of 4 for the slope. So we have y equals 4x plus b, where x is the x-coordinate and the y is the y-coordinate, and then b is the y-intercept. So let's use the point 0, 2. So we'll plug in 0 for the value of x. So we'll have 4 times 0. Then we'll plug in 2 for the value of y. So y will be 2. And then we'll solve for the value of b. So 4 times 0 is just 0. So we'll have 2 equals 0 plus b. So b is equal to 2. So now we have everything we need to make a linear function. So we'll have y equals m, which is 4, times x plus b, which is 2. So this is the equation for this line that passes through these 2 points, which is answer choice C. If x over y equals 4, and 24 times x over n times y is equal to 4, what is the value of n? Okay, so we're given these two equations, x over y equals 4, and 24x over ny equals 4 as well. And we need to solve for the value of n. Okay, so using the second equation, we can rewrite this as 24 over n multiplied with x over y. So I just took this x over y out and put them into two separate multiplying terms. And this will still be equal to 4. Okay, so now this x over y, the first equation tells us that x over y is equal to 4. So let's substitute that in. So now we'll be left with 24 times n times 4 is equal to 4. X over y is just 4. Okay, so now we want to solve for the value of n, so let's isolate for n. Let's divide both sides by 4. So that'll cancel out this 4. So we'll be left with 24 over n, which is equal to 1. Because 4 divided by 4 is just 1, and 4 divided by 4 on this side is just 1. Okay, and then if we multiply both sides by n to get n alone, we'll get that 24 equals n. So we multiply both sides by n, so 24 divided by n times n is just equal to 24, and 1 times n is just equal to n. So now we get that the value of n is equal to 24, which is the answer. The function w models the volume of liquid in milliliters in a container t seconds after it begins draining from a hole at the bottom. According to the model, what is the predicted volume in milliliters draining from the container each second? Okay, so we have this equation that gives us the volume of the liquid as a function of the time passed. So the volume is W of t, and t is the time passed. So we can see from this equation that for every second that passes, or when t increases by 1, each time t increases by 1, the volume goes down by 4, because 4 is the slope of this line, or negative 4 is the slope, which means the volume decreases by 4 every time t increases by 1. For example, W of 1 is equal to 300 minus 4 times 1. So this would be the volume of the liquid 1 second after 1 second of time has passed. So 300 minus 4 is just 296. So 4 milliliters of liquid were drained. But then W of 2 is equal to 300 minus 4 times 2, since 2 seconds have passed. So this is just equal to 300 minus 8, which is just 292. So after another second has passed, the volume of liquid went down by 4 again. So for every second that passes, 4 milliliters are drained from the container. Each year, the value of an investment increases by 0.49% of its value the previous year. Which of the following functions best models how the value of the investment changes over time. Okay, so the value of this investment changes by 0.49% every year. So the function that would best model this would have to be an increasing function, because the value of the investment is increasing. So we can rule out the decreasing answer choices, since the value is increasing, not decreasing. Okay, so now we're just down to C and D. So C says it's an increasing exponential, and D says it's an increasing linear. So just by looking at the problem statement, we can see that it's exponential because it says that the value of the investment is increasing by a fixed percentage, 0.49%. It's not increasing by a fixed value or a fixed number, like say $20 every year. That would make it linear since it's a constant change in the investment. But this is a constant percentage change. So say you had $100, and let's just round this to 0.5% to make the numbers easier. Say you had $100 in year 1. Then after in year 2, you would have $100.5. But then in year 3, you would have to take 0.5% of 100.5, not 100. So since 100.5 is greater than 100, 0.5% of year 2's value will be larger than year 1's value. So the actual change will be different, and it'll be increasing every time. So this makes it an increasing exponential function, not linear, because linear would just be it increases by 0.5 every year or some other constant value. But this is a percentage, so the actual change every year is not constant. So C is the correct answer. The solution to the given system of equations is xy. What is the value of y? Okay, so we're given these two equations, and we need to find the value of y that satisfies these two equations. We can do that by just graphing these two lines in Desmos, which you can do in the testing application. Okay, so I graphed the two lines, 24x plus y equals 48, and 6x plus y equals 72 in Desmos. So the red line is the first equation, and the blue line is the second equation. And then we can just click on where they intersect. You can once you're in Desmos in the testing application, you can zoom in to make sure that they actually intersect here. And we can look at the point of intersection. So when you click on the point of intersection, it'll give you the coordinates. So we have negative 1.333 repeating. So that's the x value. And then the y value is the second coordinate, the 80. So the question asks us for the y value. So that's going to be the second coordinate. And in this case, 80 is the second coordinate. So the y value that is the solution for the system of equations is 80. The given equation relates the variables x and y. For what value of x does the value of y reach its minimum? Okay, so we're given this quadratic right here, and we can tell this is a quadratic since the highest degree or the highest exponent is 2. And we know that this quadratic opens upward because the coefficient of the highest degree, the x squared term here, is positive. Okay, so when quadratics come in the form y equals ax squared plus bx plus c, where a, b, and c are constants, then we can use the formula x equals negative b over 2a to find the x coordinate of the vertex of a quadratic. The vertex of a quadratic is this point here for a concave up quadratic, like this quadratic in this case. So, And then for concave down quadratics, the vertex is this point here. So for a concave up, this vertex is the minimum. So at the vertex, we would find the smallest value of y over the whole function. So what we need to do is find the x coordinate of the vertex to find the value of y where it reaches its minimum. So we can just plug that into the formula, negative b over 2a. So for this quadratic, b is equal to negative 14. So we'll have negative and then negative 14 divided by 2 times a. A is the coefficient of the x squared term. So in this case, it's just 1. So 2 times 1. So then that'll be equal to, these negatives cancel out, so we'll just have 14 over 2 times 1, which is 2, which is equal to 7. So the x-coordinate of the vertex here is 7. So that 7 will be the answer. The function h is defined by h of x equals 4x plus 28. The graph of y equals h of x in the xy plane has an x-intercept at a comma 0 and a y-intercept at 0 comma b, where a and b are constants. What is the value of a plus b? So we have this equation here, the equation of a line, and we need to find the x and y intercepts so that we can find the value of a and b, and then we just need to add them together to get our answer. So for the x-intercept, occurs when the value of y is 0. So then x will be equal to a in this case. So we just need to find the value of x when y, or h of x, is 0. So we'll just set h of x equal to 0 and solve for the value of x. So we'll be left with this equation here. Then we can isolate for 4x by moving the 28 to the other side. So we'll subtract 28 from both sides. So we'll be left with 4x equals negative 28. Then if we divide both sides by 4, we'll get that x is equal to negative 7. So at a y value of 0, x is equal to negative 7, which means that a, which is the x value at the x-intercept, is equal to negative 7. Okay, so that was the x-intercept. Now let's find the y-intercept. The y-intercept occurs when the value of x is 0. So here x is 0, and then the y-intercept, or the value of b, will be the value of h of x, or y, in the equation when x is equal to 0. So let's just set x equal to 0. So we'll solve for the value of y, which is just h of x. But the value of x will be 0. So x is 0, so 4 times 0, and then plus 28. And then y equals 4 times 0, which is just 0, and then we'll just be left with the 28. So y is equal to 28 when x is equal to 0. And since the y-intercept occurs where x is equal to 0, then that means b is equal to 28. So now we have the value of a and b. So we can just add those together. So negative 7 plus 28 is the same as 28 minus 7, which is just 21. So the answer choice is A, 21. Square A has side lengths that are 166 times the side lengths of square B. The area of square A is k times the square area of square B. What is the value of k? Okay, so we have, let's say, this square is square B. and it has side lengths of, say, x. And then we have square A, whose side lengths are 166 times the side lengths of square B. So the length of the side of this square is 166 times this length of square B's sides. And the area of square A is equal to k times this area of square B. So we'll just say the area of square B is y. So we'll say it's ky. Okay. What is the value of k? So we need to find out this constant right here that relates the area of square A with the area of square B. So we know that the area of square B is just going to be x squared. So that's going to be y. And we know that the area of square A is just going to be 166x squared. Now if we simplify this, we'll get that 166 squared times x squared is the area of square A. So area of A, this square. And that this area of B is just x squared. So if we find the value of this constant here, 166 squared, this x squared is in both, and so this is just the value of k. This will be the coefficient of x squared, which is the area of B. So k will just be this coefficient. So we just need to square 166. So we can do that in our calculator. So 166 times 166, which is just equal to 27,556. So this is the area of A. And we can see that this giant coefficient here is the value of k, since it's in front of, or being multiplied with, the area of B. And the problem statement said that the area of A, which is the whole term, this whole term, is k times the area of B. And the area of B is just this x squared. So the coefficient of the area of B is equal to k. So the answer is just 27,556. Scatter plot shows the relationship between two variables, x and y. A line of best fit for the data is also shown. At x equals 25.5, which of the following is closest to the y value predicted by the line of best fit? So we need to find the y value on the line of best fit at a value of x equals 25.5. So the straight line here is the line of best fit for these data points. And at a value of x equals 25.5, which is about right here on the x-axis, if we go up from 25.5 here on the x-axis up to the line, we see that the line predicts a y value that's a little bit above 8. So the answer choice that gives us a y value a little bit above a y value of 8 is answer choice C, 8.2. So 8.2 is the right answer. The measure of angle R is 2 pi by 3 radians. The measure of angle T is 5 pi by 12 radians, greater than the measure of angle R. What is the measure of angle T in degrees? So we have an angle R that is 2 pi by 3 radians, and angle T is 5 pi by 12 radians, greater than R. So angle T is going to be 2 pi by 3, which is the measure of angle R, plus 5 pi by 12. since it's 5 pi by 12 radians larger than r. So to add these fractions together, we just need to turn the denominator of the first fraction here into 12. We can do that by multiplying this fraction by 4 over 4, which will give us an 8 pi in the numerator and 12 in the denominator. And we'll add that with 5 pi by 12, which will give us 8 plus 5 is 13. So 13 pi over 12. Okay, so that's the measure of angle t. And then we need to find the measure of angle t in degrees. Well, we know that 1 pi radian is equal to 180 degrees. So if we divide 13 pi by 12 radians by 180 degrees, or multiply it by 180 degrees per 1 pi radian, we'll cancel out the pi radians, since this had a unit of radians, and we'll get the measure of this angle from radians into degrees. So we have 13 times 180 in the numerator, and we'll divide that by 12. So we'll get 195 degrees. So the measure of angle t in degrees is 195. So C is the correct answer. A scientist initially measures 12,000 bacteria in a growth medium. 4 hours later, the scientist measures 24,000 bacteria. Assuming exponential growth, the formula P equals C times 2 raised to the RT gives the number of bacteria in the growth medium, where R and C are constants, and P is the number of bacteria T hours after the initial measurement. What is the value of R? Okay, so we have this equation, this exponential growth equation that models this problem. And we are given that the initial amount of bacteria in the medium is 12,000. So that means at times t equals 0, which is the initial condition at t equals 0, the initial population of the bacteria is 12,000. So if we plug 12,000 in for P, so 12,000, and then T as 0, we would be able to solve for the value of C. So we have C here times 2, and then this would be raised to the 0, because anything times 0 is just 0. Okay, so then 2 raised to the 0 is just 1, so we'll just be left with a C on this side, and the 12,000 will still be on this side. So that means C is equal to 12,000. Okay, so now we have everything we need in the equation except for the value of R, which is what we're going to need to solve for now. Okay, so our equation looks like this right now. P equals 12,000 times 2 raised to the RT, where R is some constant and T is the number of hours. So our equation, our problem statement here says that 4 hours later, the population becomes 24,000. So we can just plug that in for P and T. Then we can solve for the value of R. So the population after 4 hours is 24,000. So P is just 24,000. We still have the 12,000 here times 2 raised to the R. But then this time, T is equal to 4 because this is 4 hours later. Okay, so now let's divide both sides by 12,000. So when we divide both sides by 12,000, we get a 2 on this side. And we're left with 2 raised to the 4r. Okay, so then here this 2 is just raised to an exponent of 1. And since the bases are the same, we just need to set the exponents equal to each other in order to satisfy this equation. So what we need to find the value of r, we need to solve this equation here, 1 equals 4r. So we can just divide both sides by 4, and we'll get that r is equal to 1/4. So the value of r is just 1/4, which is answer choice B. What is the smallest solution to the given equation? So we have this equation here, and the first step we can do is to get rid of the square roots, and we can do that by squaring both sides. So when we square both sides, like this, it'll get rid of the square roots. So we'll just be left with what's inside. So we'll have x minus 2 squared on the left, and 3x plus 34 on the right. Okay, so now let's expand out this squared term. So we'll be left with x squared minus 4x plus 4, and then we'll have 3x plus 34 on the right. So let's move this 3x to the other side. So we'll keep the x squared, we'll have negative 7x, and then let's move this 34 to the other side. We'll subtract 34 from both sides, so we'll be left with negative 30 equals 0. Okay, now let's factor this out, and if you factor this, you'll get x minus 10 and x plus 3, because negative 10 times 3 is negative 30, and then negative 10 times x plus 3x is just negative 7x, and then x squared, x times x. So this will just equal 0. Okay, so now we have this expression, equation that's factored out, so we can use the zero product property to see what the values of x are. So in this first parentheses right here, if we plug in a value of 10 for x, it'll equal 0, and when we multiply that with any other term, it'll just be 0. So that satisfies the equation. So one of our solutions is that x equals 10. And then in the second parentheses here, if x equals negative 3, then negative 3 plus 3 equals 0. So then anything times 0 is just 0. So that satisfies the equation as well. So x just equals negative 3 as well. But then the question asks us for the smallest solution to the given equation. And negative 3 is smaller than 10, so we'll use negative 3 as our solution. So negative 3 is the answer. Which of the following are solutions to the given equation where a is a constant and a is greater than 30? So we have this equation here, and let's manipulate this so that we can factor by grouping. So let's move this quantity x minus 29 to the other side by subtracting it. So we'll be left with 0 on the left side, and on the right side we'll have x minus a times x minus 29 minus x minus 29. Okay, so the quantity x minus 29 is common to both, so we can just factor that out. So we'll have still 0 on the left. We'll factor out this x minus 29 from both, and we'll multiply it with the x minus a, and then we'll just factor out a minus 1 from the second term. Okay, so now we have this expression here, and we can see that one of the solutions is x equals 29, because when x is equal to 29, 29 minus 29 is 0. So 0 times this quantity here will just be 0 as well, which satisfies the equation. Left and right hand sides will both be equal. And then from here, the solution is x equals a plus 1. Because when x equals a plus 1, a minus a is 0, and then 1 minus 1 is 0. So then this right-hand side, 0 times this quantity, will still be 0. So that satisfies the equation as well. And so that's answer choice, or answer B, and as answer 2 and 3, which are these two solutions. The first choice here, A, is incorrect, because A minus 29 does not equal 0, and A minus 1 just equals -1, so that's not 0 either, so that wouldn't satisfy the equation. So this one is incorrect. So the answer choice is the one with 2 and 3, which is answer choice C.
Which table gives 3 values of x and their corresponding values of y for the given equation? So the equation is y equals x plus 4, and the x values are 0, 1, and 2. So let's draw a table to represent this. So at an x value of 0, y is equal to 4. At an x value of 1, y is equal to 5. And at an x value of 2, y is equal to 6. So the correct choice here would match this table, and that is answer choice A. So A is the correct answer.
In the figure, line M is parallel to line N, and line T intersects both lines. What is the value of x? So we have this set of parallel lines, M and N, and this transversal T that intersects them both. And we're given that this angle here is 33 degrees, and we need to find the value of this angle, which is x degrees. So since this is a set of parallel lines being intersected by a transversal, it means that corresponding angles are equivalent. So this 33-degree angle here is corresponding, or it corresponds to this angle right here. You can think of it as if you moved this intersection point and put it on top of this one. This angle and this angle would be overlapping. So that means that they have the same degree. And this only works for a set of parallel lines being intersected by a transversal, since these two angles here would overlap if you moved this intersection on top of this one. So they're corresponding angles, so they're both 33 degrees. And then we can find the value of x. Since this is a straight line here, this means that the total angle of this straight line is 180 degrees. And we know that this part is 33 degrees. So that means that the x degree angle here has to add up with 33 to equal 180. So the angle of x plus 33 has to equal 180. Because this right here is a straight line, and the angle x and the 33-degree angle form this straight line. So we can solve for x by just subtracting 33 from both sides. So 180 minus 33 is equal to 147. So x is just equal to 147, which is answer choice D. What percentage of 300 is 75? Okay, so we need to find a percentage of 300 that is equal to 75. So this can be written as x over 100 times 300, which equals 75. So this x over 100 is like the percentage, and then we multiply that with 300 to get a percentage of 300, and we want that to equal 75. Okay, so 300 divided by 100 is just equal to 3. So we can write this as 3x, which is equal to 75. And then divide both sides by 3 to get that x equals 25, because 75 divided by 3 is 25. So that means that 25% of 300 is equal to 75. So A is the correct answer. The function g is defined by g of x equals 6x. For what value of x is g of x equal to 54? Okay, so we have that g of x is equal to 6x. And we want g of x to equal 54. So we'll set g of x equal to 54. And we need to solve for the value of x that gives us 54. So we'll just set them equal to each other, and we'll just solve for the value of x. So if we divide both sides by 6, the 6 here will cancel out, and we'll just have a 1 left. So we'll just have x on the right, and then 54 divided by 6 is just equal to 9. So the value of x is 9. So 9 is the answer. The function f is defined by f of x equals 270 times 0.1 raised to the x. What is the value of f of 0? Okay, so f of 0 is just the value of f of x when x is equal to 0. So we'll just plug in 0 for x. So we want to find the value of f of 0. We'll plug in the value of x equals 0 into the equation. So here's x equals 0. So 0.1 raised to the 0th power is just 1. Anything raised to the 0 power is just equal to 1. So we'll just have 270 times 1, which is just equal to 270. So f of 0 is equal to 270. In right triangle RST, the sum of the measures of angle R and S is 90 degrees. The value of sine R is square root 15 over 4. What is the value of cosine of S? Okay, so let's draw out this triangle. We have a right triangle, so 90 degrees here. And they tell us that the sum of the measures of angle R and S add up to 90. And since it's a right triangle, it means that R and S must be these two angles here. You could swap them around, it won't really matter. Because R and S add up to 90 degrees, it has to be one of these. R and S have to be either of these two angles, because if it was this angle in here, this is already 90 degrees. So that would be saying the other angle is 0 degrees. And in that case, we wouldn't have a right triangle. So, okay, so let's make S this angle and R this angle. And it's telling us that the sine of R is square root 15 over 4. So sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So opposite to R is this right here. So this is the square root of 15. And then divided by the hypotenuse. So it's saying the hypotenuse is 4. Okay, so that gives us two sides of the triangle. But that's all we'll need to find the cosine of S. Because the cosine of an angle is adjacent over hypotenuse. And adjacent to S is the square root 15. And the hypotenuse to S is the hypotenuse here, which is 4. So the sine of R was equal to square root 15 over 4. And the cosine of S is also equal to square root 15 over 4. So you'll see that for complementary angles, meaning angles that add up to 90 degrees, the sine of one angle is equal to the cosine of the other angle. So the answer for what is the value of cosine of S is just square root 15 over 4, which is answer choice B. The function f is defined by f of x equals negative 8 times 2 raised to the x plus 28. What is the y-intercept of the graph of y equals f of x in the xy plane? So we have this function, and we need to find the y-intercept. And we know that the y-intercept occurs when x is equal to 0. So we just need to find the value of y when x is equal to 0, where y equals f of x. So we'll just find the value of f of 0. So we'll just plug in 0 for x. So we have negative 8 times 2, which is in parentheses since we're raising it to the 0th power, plus 22. So anything raised to the 0th power is just 1. So we'll just have negative 8, since negative 8 times 1 is just negative 8. And then this plus 22. And 22 or negative 8 plus 22 is the same thing as 22 minus 8. So that's just equal to 14. So at a value of x equals 0, the y value is 14. So this is the y-intercept of this graph. This is where the graph crosses the y-axis, which is answer choice A. Which expression is equivalent to 4 over 4x minus 5 minus 1 over x plus 1? So we need to see which one of these answer choices is equal to this expression. So we have two terms in this expression, 4 over 4x minus 5 and 1 over x plus 1. So we can't immediately subtract these two terms because they have different denominators. But we can multiply them so that they have the same denominator. Okay, so we want this 4x minus 5 to have an x plus 1 in the denominator. But we don't want to change the fraction, so we can just multiply it by x plus 1 over x plus 1. X plus 1 over x plus 1 is just 1 if you cancel these out. So we're really just multiplying by 1, but this will change it into an equivalent form where it has x plus 1 in the denominator. But then we also need to change this one so that it'll have a 4x minus 5 in the denominator. So we'll do the same thing. We'll just multiply it by 4x minus 5 over 4x minus 5. So then the denominator for both of the terms will be 4x minus 5 times x plus 1. And we're just multiplying by 1 here, so it doesn't change the value of this fraction. So then our problem simplifies to 4 times x plus 1 over 4x plus 5 times x plus 1 minus 1 times 4x plus 5 over x plus 1 times 4x minus 5. So this 4x plus 4 times x plus 1 is just from the numerator up here, and the denominator for both is just x plus 1 times 4x minus 5. Oh, this should be a minus right here. So let's erase that and put a negative sign. And then the numerator for this term over here was just the 1 times the 4x minus 5. Okay, so now they have the same denominator. We can just add the numerators together. So we'll be left with 4x plus 4. If we expand out, is distribute this 4 to the x and the 1. And then we'll get minus 4x minus 5. Since there's a minus sign here, and then 1 times anything is just that quantity, so we can just distribute this negative sign to the 4x and the negative 5. And then the denominator stays the same. It's just x plus 1 times 4x minus 5. Okay, so the correct answer choice up here should have an x plus 1 and a 4x minus 5 in the denominator. So we can just rule out answer choice B, since that's incorrect. But then A, C, and D have x plus 1 times 4x minus 5 in the denominators, but then the numerators are different. So let's simplify down this numerator. So we see that this 4x cancels out with this negative 4x, and then 4 minus 5 is just equal to negative 1. So the numerator simplifies to negative 1. And the only answer choice with a negative 1 in the numerator is answer choice C. And it has the correct denominator here as well. So C is the correct answer. The function f is defined by f of x equals this quantity here. In the xy plane, the graph of y equals g of x, so a different function, is the result of translating the graph of y equals f of x up 4 units. What is the value of g of 0? So we have this graph or equation f of x, and we have another equation, g of x, that is the graph of f of x but translated up 4 units. So say f of x was some kind of line that looked like this in the xy plane. then g of x would just be the line translated up 4 units. So every point on f of x would just be translated up. So g of x, the translated graph, would just be equal to f of x plus 4. Since everything is being translated up by 4 units, all the y values, the g of x values, would be 4 units more. So we can apply that same logic to this f of x. So f of x is equal to x minus 6, x minus 2 times x plus 6. So then g of x is just equal to f of x plus 4. So g of x is just x minus 6 times x minus 2 times x plus 6 plus 4. Okay, so now we can find the value of g of 0, now that we have the equation for g of x. So g of 0 is just the value of g of x when x is equal to 0. So 0 minus 6 is just negative 6. 0 minus 2 is just negative 2. And then 0 plus 6 is just 6. And then we still have the plus 4. So then negative 6 times 6 is equal to negative 36. And negative 36 times negative 2 is equal to a positive 72. And then 72 plus 4 is equal to 76. So the value of g of 0 is 76. A cube has a volume of 474,552 cubic units. What is the surface area in square units of the cube? So we're given a cube. Let's draw a cube here. Since it's a cube, it has all equal sides. The lengths of each side is equal. We'll say it's S. And the volume of this cube is this large number here. So the volume of this cube is 474,552 units. We know that the equation for the volume of a cube is side cubed, because it's just the formula of length times width times height, but since all the sides are of equal length on a cube, so it's length times width times height is just side times side times side, which is just side cubed. Okay, so we can use the volume then to solve for the length of each side on the cube. So we can do that by cube rooting both sides. Cube rooting will get rid of the cube root, or the cube value here on s, so we'll just be left with an s on the right side. And then the cube root of 474,552, we can just put that into our calculator. So 474,552. That's basically like raising it to the power of 1 divided by 3. And that's just equal to 78. So the cube root of 474,552 is just 78. So that means each side has a length of 78 cubic units. And we can just use that to find the surface area of a cube. So the surface, or the area of one side of a cube, is just equal to sides squared. So that's just going to be 78 squared. So 78 times 78 is equal to 6,084. So the area of one side is just 6,084. But we know that a cube has 6 sides. So the surface area of the cube is just 6 times the area of one side. So the surface area, we'll call that SA, is just equal to 6 times the area. So 6 times 6,084. So 6 times 6,084 is equal to 36,000 504. So the surface area of a cube with this volume is 36,504. For the function q, the value of q of x decreases by 45% for every increase in the value of x by 1. If q of 0 equals 14, which equation defines q? Okay, so we need to find which one of these exponential equations here matches up with the scenario. So the problem statement tells us that q of 0 equals 14, which means that when x equals 0, the value of q of x equals 14. So let's just plug in x equals 0 into all of these answer choices. So for the first one, when we plug in 0 for the value of x, so x here will just be 0, so 14 will be raised to the power of 0. And so 14 raised to the power of 0 is just 1, since anything raised to the 0 power is just 1. So we'll just be left with 0.55, which is not equal to 14, like the problem statement said it should be. So answer choice A is incorrect. Then answer choice B, we have 1.45 times 14. We'll plug in 0 for x, and then we'll just be left with 1.45, which again is not equal to 14, so answer choice B is incorrect, because so A and B didn't satisfy the condition that q of 0 equals 14. So let's check C as well. So we'll have 14 times 0.55 raised to the 0th power, which is just equal to 14. So that's good, because it satisfies the initial condition. And then answer choice D, 14 times 1.45 raised to the 0th power is also equal to 14. Okay, so C and D both satisfy the condition that q of 0 equals 14. Now we need to check which one satisfies the condition that as q of x decreases by 45% for every increase in the value of x by 1. So we can check that by looking at the base of this exponent here. So when we plug in a value of, say, 0 for x, we get 14 for each, which means that the next value, when we increase x by 1, so when we're going from x equals 0 to x equals 1, the value of q of x should decrease. So let's plug in a value of x in 1 for both answer choice C and D. So let's do C first. So we'll have the 14 times 0.55 raised to the first power. So this is just 14 times 0.55. And we know that this quantity, since 0.55 is less than 1, this quantity is less than 14. Which means that when we went from x equals 0, which had a q of x value of 14, to x equals 1, we got a value that is less than 14. Okay, so that looks good, but let's check answer choice D. So when we plug in value of x equals 1 for D, so we'll have the 14 and then 1.45 times raised to the power of 1. We'll be left with 14 times 1.45. Okay, this quantity here is actually greater than 14, because 14 times something that is greater than 1 will always result in a larger number, since 1.45 is greater than 1. So, but that goes against what the problem statement said, because as the value of x increases by 1, q of x is supposed to decrease by 45%. But answer choice D said that it increased. So answer choice D is incorrect. So answer choice C is correct, because it satisfied both conditions. For which of the following tables are all the values of x and the corresponding values of y solutions to the given inequality? So we have this inequality that y is less than 6x plus 2. So we'll make a table here of the x values 3, 5, and 7, since all the answer choices use 3, 5, and 7. So we'll make a table here. 3, 5, and 7. And we'll find the value of y as if this were an equal sign. We'll just plug in x equals 3 to find the maximum value that y can be. So then we'll see, we'll make sure that these y values here for the correct answer choice are all less than the maximum values for the corresponding x. So when you plug in a value of 3 for x, we get 6 times 3 is 18 plus 2, which is 20. 6 times 5 is 30 plus 2 is 32. 6 times 7 is 42 plus 2 is 44. Okay, so these are like the maximum values that y can be for the corresponding value of x, since y has to be less than 6x plus 2. So these are the values of 6x plus 2, and y has to be less than that. So answer choice A says that an x value of 3, y is 20. So 20 is not less than 20, so answer choice A is wrong, since y has to be less than 20 at an x value of 3. So answer choice B says at an x value of 3, y is 16. That's good because 16 is less than 20. At an x value of 5, y is 36. That's not good because 36 is greater than 32. So that would not be a solution to the inequality. So B is incorrect. Answer choice C says that at x value of 3, y is 16. That's good because 16 is less than 20, and x value of 5, y is 28. That's good because 28 is less than 32. And an x value of 7, y is 40, which is also good because 40 is less than 44. So answer choice C seems to be correct. And then answer choice D, we can instantly see that it's wrong because it's saying that an x value of 3, y is 24, but 24 is greater than 20, so answer choice D is incorrect. So C is the correct answer. Which of the following expressions is R a factor of 3x squared plus 20x minus 63? These are the two options. So we need to factor this quadratic right here and see whether either of these or both are its options, are its factors. So we have this quadratic here, 3x squared plus 20x minus 63, and we need to factor this. So to factor this by grouping, what we need to do is split this 20 into two separate terms that when added together equal 20, so that keeps the expression the same, but when multiplied equal 3 times negative 63. And in this case, those two terms are negative 7 and 27, because 7 times 27 is equal to 3 times negative 63. But negative 7 plus 27 gives us back the 20x. So we're just going to split the 20x into negative 7x plus 27x minus 63. Then we can just factor out some terms. So from these first two terms, we can factor out an x. So we'll be left with 3x minus 7. So we just factored out an x from both of these terms. And then from these two terms, we can factor out a 9. So when we factor out a 9, we're left with 3x minus 7. Okay, and now we can see that these two quantities right here, the 3x minus 7, are common to both. So we can factor that out. So 3x minus 7, that will be multiplied by these coefficients, x plus 9 for these factors. So multiplying this back out would get us back to this. But now we have a fully factored out quadratic, and we can see whether these two are really its factors. So one of our factors is 3x minus 7, which is answer choice, the second one here. And then the other factor is x plus 9. Well, x plus 9 is not here. And the first choice here says x minus 9 is a factor, but that's incorrect because x plus 9 is a factor. So this one is wrong. So that means the answer choice that is correct should only say that the second one is correct. So that is answer choice B. So B is the right answer. In the given system of equations, h is a constant. If the system has no solution, what is the value of h? So we have these two equations here, equation 1 and equation 2, and we need to find a value of h such that the system has no solution. And a system has no solution when a system of linear equation has no solutions when the two lines are parallel to each other. So say something like this, and they're not overlapping, meaning like the y-intercept is different, but the slopes are the same. This means these two lines would never intersect, so they would never have a solution or a point of intersection. So we need to find some value of h that results in the two lines being of the same slope but different y-intercepts. Okay, so looking at the first and second equation, we can see that we can make the left-hand side look similar to the left-hand side of this equation by moving this 4x to the other side. So let's do that. So we'll have 4x minus 9y from the first equation equals 9y plus 5. So then we'll move the 4x to the other side. So this way we'll have a negative 4x on this side and a positive hy, which will equal just 2, since we subtracted a 4x from both sides. Okay, so now let's just eliminate the x variable by adding these two equations together. We can do that since these are equations, that means these sides are equal, and since you're adding it equal quantities to both sides, you're not changing the equation. So it still remains true. So 4x plus minus 4x is just going to be 0, so that cancels out to 0. And then negative 9y plus hy. So we're going to have a negative 9y plus hy. Then we'll have a 9y on this side. And then we'll have a plus 7. Okay, so now we can move all the y's to one side. So if we move the y's to the left side, we'll get negative 18y plus hy equals 7. So now we need to change this equation such that we get an equation that's not true. So we need to somehow cancel out the y's here. So we need to choose an h value accordingly so that this 18y gets canceled out. And we can do that by setting h equal to 18. Because if we set h equal to 18, we'll get that negative 18y plus 18y is equal to 7. But these two cancel out. So the equation will result in 0 equals 7. And because we result in an equation that's not true when we set h equal to 18, this means that at an h value of 18, the equation has no solution. So h is equal to 18, and that's answer choice D. What is the positive solution to the given equation? So we have this equation here with absolute values, and we need to find a solution that is positive. So this is the equation, 2 times the absolute value of 4 minus x plus 3 times the absolute value of 4 minus x, which equals 25. So we can see that this quantity right here, the 4 minus x, is common to both these terms. So we can just factor these out. So we'll factor out the 4 minus x, and so then we'll multiply it with the two coefficients. 2, and 3. So we could just add the 2 and 3 together to get 5 times this absolute value of 4 minus x equals 25. You could have just skipped from this step to this line here by just adding them together as if they were like terms. Since both of these have this quantity, absolute value of 4 minus x, you can just add the coefficients together, kind of like adding like terms together. Okay, so now that we have this, we can start isolating for x. So the first thing we want to do is divide both sides by 5. That'll get rid of this 5 here. So 5 over 5 is just 1, so it changes nothing. So absolute value 4 minus x over on this side. And then 25 divided by 5 is just 5. Okay, now that we've gotten to this step, we can use the absolute value property to notice that this is the same as two equations. The first one is 4 minus x equals 5. And the second one is that 4 minus x equals negative 5. So when 4 minus x equals 5, so this quantity inside the absolute value, and the absolute value of 5 is just 5. So the equation will end with 5 equals 5. So that satisfies the equation. But then 4 minus x equals negative 5. So when the quantity in here equals negative 5, the absolute value of a negative number is just its positive version. So absolute value of negative 5 is just 5. So then 5 equals 5, and the equation is still true. Okay, so now we can just solve for the value of x in both of these equations. So the first equation says that the value of x is equal to negative 1. Since 4 minus negative 1 is just 4 plus 1, so 4 plus 1 equals 5. And then the second equation says that the value of x is 9, because 4 minus 9 is equal to negative 5. Okay, so now we have two solutions, x equals negative 1 and x equals 9. But the problem asks for the positive solution. So we just use the x equals 9 solution since 9 is positive, and not the x equals negative 1 since negative 1 is negative. So the answer is 9. A small business owner budgets $2,200 to purchase candles. The owner must purchase a minimum of 200 candles to maintain the discounted pricing. If the owner pays $4.90 per candle to purchase small candles and $11.60 per candle to purchase large candles, what is the maximum number of large candles the owner can purchase to stay within the budget and maintain the discounted pricing? Okay, so we have to meet two constraints here. The budget is 2,200, and we need to purchase at least 200 candles. So we can express this with two equations. We'll say that x, or better, let's use S for small candles and L for large candles. The number of small plus large, let's say for now that they just add up to 200. Okay, and then small candles cost $4.90 each, so 4.9s will give us the total amount spent on small candles, and when we add that with 11.6L, the cost of one large candle multiplied with the number of large candles will give us the total amount spent on large candles, and that should add up to at most 2,200. Okay, so these two equations represent the scenario that we want only 200 candles and we will spend 2,200. So this will give us the total. So when we solve for L here for the number of large candles, this will give us the number of large candles needed to just barely add up to 200 total candles, and for the cost to be just at 2,200. So this will give us the maximum number of large candles. So there are obviously other combinations of S and L that would be below 2,200 and above 200 candles. You could just increase the number of small candles. This would keep you above the 200 candle minimum, whilst reducing the number of large candles so that you can stay within the budget. But by setting them equal to these two quantities, we can find the maximum number of large candles that we can purchase. Okay, so you could solve this by hand for L, but it would be easier to just use the Desmos graphing calculator. So here I've graphed the two equations. X is just the number of small candles, and Y is just the number of large candles. So here Desmos found the point of intersection right here, and it tells us it's at an X value of 17.91 and a Y value of 182.9. But using our coordinates here, X is just small candles and Y is just large candles. So it's telling us that the maximum is 182.09 large candles. But we need the large candles to be a whole number, so we can just round this down. So this is roughly equal to 182 candles. So at 182 candles, large candles, we can only afford to get about 17 or 18 candles. So that adds up to the 200 candle limit. And if you were to multiply these by their cost, this would also meet the budget constraint. So the maximum number of large candles we can buy is 182. The function f gives the value in dollars of a certain piece of equipment after X months of use. If the value of the equipment decreases each year by P% of its value the preceding year, what is the value of P? Okay, so we have this function that gives us the value in dollars of a piece of equipment, and we need to find out how much the value decreases every year, or after every 12 months. And we can do that by just plugging in 2 years and seeing what the decrease in value is. So first let's find f of 0, the value in the beginning, or month 0. So we can do that by just plugging in a value of 0 for x. So x is 0. So we'll just have 5,470 times 0.64 raised to the 0 power, because 0 divided by 12 is just 0. And so this just equals 5,470, since 0.64 raised to the 0th power is just 1. So, and 1 times 5,470 is just 5,470. Okay, now let's do the next year. So f of 12. So since x is in months, so after 12 months, that'll count as finding the value after 1 year. So we'll have 5,470 times 0.64 raised to the first power, because 12 divided by 12 is just 1. So this will just be equal to 5,470 times 0.64. And we can do that in our calculator. 5,470 times 0.64. So we'll get 3,500.8. Okay, so now we see that the value decreased by some amount. So let's find that percentage. So we can do that by just dividing the difference. So we'll just find the percentage change. So we'll see. So 5,470 minus 3,500.8. So that's the change. And then we need to divide that by the initial amount, 5,470, and multiply that by 100 to get the percentage change. So when we put this into our calculator, so 5,470 minus 3,500.8 gives us that. We divide that by 5,470 and multiply. Oh, I divided by accident. Okay, so 5,470 minus 3,500.8. We'll get this, and we need to divide that by 5,470. And then multiply by 100 to get a percentage. So we get that the percentage change going from year 0 to year 1 was 36%. So that means P is equal to 36, since the value decreased by 36% going from year 0 to year 1. So that's answer choice C. The function f is defined by the given equation. If g of x equals f of x plus 2, which of the following equations defines the function g? Okay, so we have this function f of x, and we want to find g of x, which is f of x plus 2. So we can find g of x by just substituting x plus 2 in for x in f of x. So g of x equals f of x plus 2. So we'll just plug in f of x plus 2 into this equation. So f of x plus 2 equals 9 times 4 raised to the x plus 2. So x just got replaced by x plus 2 instead. So now, using the property of exponents, we can simplify this down. So one property of exponents is that if you have, say, a constant a being raised to the power, say, x plus y, then we can rewrite this as a times x, a raised to the x, times a raised to the y. Because we know from the property of exponents that when you have the same base and you're multiplying them together, then you just add the exponents. So this would just equal that. So we can use that property of exponents to simplify this down. So we'll just split the 9 times 4 into two different terms. So 4 raised to the x times 4 raised to the 2. But it would still be multiplying with 9, since we're raising the 4 to this power, not the 9. So then we can just simplify this 4 squared. So it'll be 9 times 4 squared, which is 16, times 4 raised to the x. And then we can just put that into our calculator. 9 times 16 is 144. So this simplifies to 144 times 4 raised to the x, which is answer choice B. One solution to the given equation can be written as 1 plus the square root of k, where k is a constant. What is the value of k? Okay, so we're given this quadratic here, and we need to find the solutions so that we can find the value of k. So we can solve this by using the quadratic formula. So the quadratic formula states that x is equal to negative b plus minus b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, where this is for a quadratic of the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So here a is going to be a 1, since the coefficient of x squared is just 1. B is going to be negative 2, and c is going to be negative 9. Okay, so let's plug that into our formula. So negative b is going to be negative 2. So that's just 2 plus minus square root of b squared. So negative 2 squared is 4 minus 4 times a, which is 1, and c, which is negative 9. All that square rooted over 2a. So a is 1, so the denominator is just 2. Okay, let's simplify this down. So we'll get x equals 2 plus or minus. So 4 minus 4 times 9. We don't need to multiply by the 1 since that doesn't change anything. So negative 4 times negative 9 is equal to positive 36. And all of that will be over 2. Okay, so let's simplify this square root down. So we'll still have the 2 plus minus. So this is the square root of 40 over 2. And we know that 40 is equal to 4 times 10, right? So 40 equals 4 times 10. Here, let me write that better. So this is equal to 4 times 10. And we know that the square root of 4 is just 2, so we can take that outside. So x equals 2 plus or minus 2 times 10. So we split the 40 into 4 times 10, and the square root of 4 times 10 is just equal to 2 times the square root of 10. So all of that will be over 2. And then one final step is we can just divide these coefficients. So x will equal 1 plus or minus the square root of 10. So we just divided 2 by 2 to get 1, and this 2 by 2 to get 1 as well. So now we have our solution written in the form of 1 plus square root of k. So we'll just use the positive solution. So x equals 1 plus square root of 10. There's a negative solution, but the positive solution is the one that's in this form. So we have the 1 and the plus sign and the square root of some constant. So we can easily see that k here is 10, since k is the constant being square rooted. So that means k is equal to 10. So the answer choice that is correct is B. In the given equation, k is an integer constant. If the equation has no real solution, what is the least possible value of k? Okay, so we have this equation here, x times kx minus 56 equals negative 16. We have to find a value of k so that this equation has no real solution. Okay, so let's first distribute out this x. So we'll get kx squared minus 56x. And let's move this negative 16 to the other side. So we'll add 16 to both sides, and then negative 16 plus 16 is just 0. Okay, so now we can see we have a quadratic that's of the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. And that's good. So we can just use the fact that this is a quadratic to find the discriminant. So the discriminant is equal to b squared minus 4ac. And an equation has no solution when the discriminant is equal to a negative number. So when the discriminant is less than 0. So we need to find the discriminant now. So let's do that. So the b term here is the coefficient of the x term. So in this case it's negative 56. So it'll be negative 56 squared. And then minus 4 times a, which is the coefficient of the x squared term, this a here, and that's k. And then c is the constant. It's over here, so that's 16. So 16. And that has to be less than 0. Okay, so let's simplify this down. So negative 56 squared is just the same thing as 56 times 56, since negative times a negative cancels out. So we have 3,136 minus 4 times k times 16, which is just equal to negative 64k. So that has to be less than 0. So now we can solve for a value of k. Let's move the negative 64k to the other side, so we'll be left with 3,136 is less than 64k. Then let's divide both sides by 64 to get k isolated. So when we divide both sides by 64, we'll be left with just this should be a 64. We'll just be left with 1k on the right side, and then we'll have to do this division in our calculator. So 3,136 divided by 64 equals 49. And then we can just flip this to say that k is greater than 49. So that means we need to be greater than 49 in order for the discriminant to be negative. Because when the discriminant is negative, that means we have no solution. So now the question asks us for an integer, which means like a whole number, positive or negative, and it has to be the least possible. So the smallest value we can be while also being an integer is something greater than 49. The next integer that is greater than 49 is 50. So the smallest integer possible for the value of k is 50. A window repair specialist charges $220 for the first 2 hours of repair, plus an hourly fee for each additional hour. The total cost for 5 hours of repair is $400. Which function f gives the total cost in dollars for x hours of repair, where x is greater than or equal to 2? Okay, so for the first 2 hours, the window specialist charges $220. And then after those 2 hours, so greater than 2 hours, he charges some fee that we don't know yet. Okay, we can represent this by, so let's say that the total cost is equal to $220, since we will be greater than or equal to 202 hours, so we will always be charged the $220 plus some hourly fee for each additional hour. We can represent that by this right here, n times x minus 2, where x is the number of hours, and x minus 2, or the number of hours minus 2 that it takes for a repair job, will give us the total number of hours spent on the repair job after the first 2 hours. Since we're subtracting 2 from the total number of hours, this will give us how many hours that we are being charged the hourly fee for. So n will be the hourly fee. So we can use the information that the total cost for 5 hours of repair is $400 to solve for n. So the total cost was 400, so we'll substitute that in for the total cost. So 400, and that equals 220 plus n times 5 hours, since we spent 5 hours on the repair job. So x will be 5 minus 2. So then we can simplify this to 400 equals 220 plus 5 minus 2, which is 3, so 3n. So then we can just solve for the value of n. 400 minus 220 is equal to 180 if we subtract 220 from both sides. So then we'll be left with 180 equals 3n. Then if we divide both sides by 3, we'll get that n equals 60. Okay, so now we know our hourly fee. So we can substitute that in for our original equation. So let's do that here. So we say that our total cost, we'll say that's f of x now, since that's what the problem statement wanted us to give it as. It's a function f that gives the total cost as a function of the x hours of repair. So f of x equals 220 plus 60, since n is now 60, since we solved for that here. That's the hourly fee times x minus 2. It's important that we keep the x minus 2 because the hourly fee of 60 is only charged for the hours after the first 2. So x minus 2 gives us the hours after the first 2. So we can just simplify this down. So 220 plus 60x minus 120. And that is just equal to, so 220 minus 120 is just equal to 100. So this is just 60x plus 100. And that is answer choice A. Two data sets of 23 integers each are summarized in the histogram shown. For each of the histograms, the first interval represents the frequency of integers greater than or equal to 10 but less than 20. The second interval represents the frequency of integers greater than or equal to 20 but less than 30, and so on. What is the smallest possible difference between the mean of dataset A and the mean of dataset B? Okay, so these are the data sets where the x-axis shows the integer or the value in the data set, and then the frequency here shows how many times that integer occurs in the data set. And we see that they have the same shape, but dataset B is to the left or more to the left than dataset A, which is more to the right. So that means dataset A's mean is larger than dataset B. And if we want to find the smallest possible difference, we need to find the smallest mean of dataset A possible and find its difference with the largest dataset for B possible, because that would give us the smallest possible difference. So the smallest possible dataset A mean that we can find is assuming that all the integers in this range, going from like 20 to 30, that all of them are at 20. And if we do that for each of the intervals, like looking at the boundary, instead of the whole interval to find the smallest possible mean, we'll find the mean that is smallest possible here. So let's do that for dataset A. So dataset A says that we have 3 as a frequency for this interval here from 20 to 30. But we want to find the smallest integers possible. So we'll assume that they're all 20. So we'll have 3 20s. Then we'll add that with 4 30s. And then 7 40s. And then 9 50s. And that will all be above 23 since each has 23 values. So this will give us the smallest mean possible for dataset A. So let's put that into our calculator and find the mean. So 3 times 20 plus 4 times 30 plus 7 times 40 plus 9 times 50. That's equal to 910 divided by 23. And that's about 39.56. 39.56. So that's the mean of dataset A. Now let's do the same thing for B, but this time, since B's mean is smaller than dataset A, since B is including values from 10 to 20, so it's like the dataset of A, but shifted a little to the left, making the mean smaller. We want to find the largest possible mean for dataset B. So then we'll use boundary points on the right side instead. So here in this range from 10 to 20, it's saying that there are 3 values. But instead of using values that are small, we'll use the largest possible. So the largest possible in this interval are 19. So, and the largest possible in this interval are 29. The largest integers possible in this interval are 39. And the largest possible integers in this interval are 49s. So we'll use those for the value for the means. So we have 3 19s plus 4 29s plus 7 39s, and then plus 9 49s. And we'll all divide that by 23 to get the mean, since there are 23 total integers in each data set. And if we put that into our calculator, 3 times 19 plus 4 times 29 plus 7 times 39 plus 9 times 49, we'll get 887. Divide that by 23, and we get 38.56. 38.56. So this was the largest possible, or the smallest possible mean we could find for data set A, and this was the largest possible mean we could find for data set B. So the difference between these two will give us the smallest possible difference between the means of the two data sets. So, and the difference between these two is 1. So the correct answer choice is B.